albeit across some eastern parts of Scotland where we have those clearer skies, it could be a touch chillier here, and there may even be a little bit of frost. The flip side of that, though, is there will be some brighter skies across eastern Scotland first thing tomorrow morning. Notice towards the far northwest there's some rain waiting to push its way in and some blustery winds in association with this, but across much of Scotland, northern England, quite a bit of cloud to start. A much sunnier start, though, for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud across central southern England and also Wales, and here it's going to be quite low in places, so some hill fog, some murky conditions, even a bit of drizzly rain. Could be a little bit dank at times as we go through the morning. As we go into the afternoon, we are going to see increasing amounts of sunshine across much of Scotland, northern and western England and Wales, holding on to the grey, cloudy skies, though, across parts of the southeast. Temperatures, again, a little bit above average for the time of year across the north, generally getting into double figures, nearer normal towards the south. Looking ahead to Thursday, and again, it's a bit of a northwest-southeast split when it comes to cloud amounts, so staying cloudy and grey towards the southeast, most places having another largely dry day, though. And the mostly dry weather continues as we go through the end of the week and into the weekend, but it is going to be pretty cloudy for most of us, and we're going to see our temperatures dropping as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever. An incredible £50,000. That's tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this year. What would you spend it on? £50,000 could buy those treats you've always dreamed of having. And just one entry into the Great British Giveaway really could make £50,000 cash all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as a upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop. You need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollals and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. It's still, I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. The Labour Party is set to show its true colours again in a double whammy of socialism. Its new anti-company, so-called workers' rights bill is set to devastate already struggling businesses and to crush freedom of speech. As Red Rachel teeters on the brink of dismissal, she faced the Commons earlier today amidst the market turmoil. I'll be assessing the state of the economy with Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith. We'll also be discussing the Corruption Minister, Tulip Siddiq, who has resigned following, of all things, corruption allegations. Well, I suppose she was the Corruption Minister. Plus, the government is reportedly on the brink of finalising the Chagos Islands deal ahead of the Trump inauguration. Suella Braverman joins me in a moment as she castigates this decision. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former Conservative Immigration Minister, Tom Pursglove, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. As ever, it's a crucial part of the programme. Let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite part of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you, and good evening to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 8. Well, top story tonight, Rachel Reeves has been grilled in Parliament after her China trip sparked political outrage. Reeves defended her visit, highlighting agreements she reached with the world's second largest economic power.
Opportunity to make working people off by making Britain better off. That is the mandate that this government has, and this is what we will deliver.
Despite calls for her sacking, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer insists she will remain Chancellor until the next election. But Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride slammed Reeves for leaving during financial turmoil here at home, calling it a crisis made in Downing Street.
To go or not to go, that is now a question. The Prime Minister will be damned if he does, but he will surely be damned if he does not. The British people deserve better.
Chancellor of the Exchequer. Tulip Siddiq has stepped down as Treasury Minister amid mounting pressure from an anti-corruption investigation. The Labour MP is facing allegations of embezzlement involving her family in Bangladesh, where her aunt served as Prime Minister. She's also under investigation here in the UK over properties linked to her aunt's allies. Well, despite insisting she's done nothing wrong, she says that staying in that role could have been a distraction. It's the second resignation in just 6 months, raising further questions about Sir Keir Starmer's leadership. Well, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has weighed in on Siddiq's resignation, accusing the Prime Minister of being far too slow to act.
I think the Prime Minister was far too slow to act in this case. The independent advisers' reports say there are still a number of unanswered questions about the origin of some of these extremely expensive properties that Tulip Siddiq somehow purchased. She had no visible means to do so. She herself claims to have forgotten certain information about how she came to own them. There are lots of unanswered questions about whether these properties are connected to Tulip Siddiq's aunt's corrupt regime in Bangladesh.
In a first-of-its-kind operation, 3 men have been arrested in Iraq for allegedly running a global people smuggling network, moving migrants here to the UK and elsewhere across Europe. One of the men is a 38-year-old accused of coordinating the transportation of migrants via yachts. The other 2 men, one in their 40s, the other in their 30s, are accused of possessing financial transactions and gathering migrants for that network. The group are believed to have links to a UK-based smuggler who was jailed last year for facilitating small boat channel crossings. And the Princess of Wales has revealed her cancer is in remission in an emotional Instagram post earlier. She thanked staff at the Royal Marsden Hospital for their exceptional care, saying it's a relief to be in remission after chemotherapy. Princess Catherine also shared that adjusting to life after a cancer diagnosis does take time, but expressed hope for a fulfilling year ahead. And the message signed Catherine also thanked supporters for their kindness over the past year. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. 3 things in life are certain: death and taxes you knew about, and now socialists not understanding the law of unintended consequences. It was 1950s communist China when Chairman Mao introduced his 4 pests campaign as part of the Great Leap Forward. Purporting to be scientifically sound, Chinese citizens were mobilised to engage in a mass extermination campaign of sparrows as a means of increasing rice yields. But lo and behold, it came to pass that with the sparrows dead, the food chain was heavily disrupted, which gave way to other bugs and insects which devastated the crops. As a result, as many as 55 million people died. I'm not going quite so far as to compare Keir Starmer to Chairman Mao, but he appears as another socialist to struggle with the law of unintended consequences. Look no further than Labour's new Workers' Rights Charter, which is expected to come into force next year. The Charter will include a whole host of supposed rights, which on the face of it, much like Mao's 4 Pests campaign, sound relatively sensible. But when you engage in a scintilla of foresight and look at the fine print, the picture becomes ugly. The government's own assessment of the costs this legislation will place on business is £5 billion a year. However, business leaders are concerned it will cost much more. When you consider the fact that Labour has already sent our economy into stagnation, if not stagflation, by its increases to employer national insurance and inheritance tax, this could push the economy into recession. Perhaps even more importantly, the Charter puts a duty on employers to prevent employees being harassed by third parties, such as customers. In other words, controversial discussions about religion or trans ideology in places such as pubs or restaurants could be banned. If such conversations pose a risk for employers, then customers could be banned too. The entire policy could create an adventure playground for employment rights lawyers, and even the Equality and Human Rights Commission has warned it could curtail freedom of expression and be applied to overheard conversations. You'll be able to sue if you're an eavesdropper. So there you have it. As Mao's euphemistically named Great Leap Forward killed tens of millions, Keir Starmer's euphemistically named Workers' Rights Charter will kill British businesses, destroy jobs and spend our economy into recession. As a mere side effect of worthiness, it will also erode freedom of speech. There comes a point where the unintended consequences are so clearly foreseeable that socialists can no longer pretend they are unintended. Make no mistake, Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party is anti-prosperity and anti-freedom. As ever, let me know your views via mayormog@gbnews.com. But I'm joined now by a friend of the programme, PR tycoon and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. Kevin, thank you for coming in. When even the Equality and Human Rights Commission is saying that this could stop freedom of speech, making employers responsible for people's views in a pub is pretty silly legislation, isn't it?
Well, good to see you, Jacob. First of all, let me just say, as you'd expect me to, the way you've described this legislation, I think, is one way of doing it. This bill is also, I think, about giving workers more protection against unfair dismissal, rights to guaranteed hours, better sick pay, bereavement pay, things that many listeners and viewers of this programme will be in favour of. The hypothetical, because you, very erudite man, said could cause these consequences. These hypothetical consequences, most sensible people, I think, would agree with the British Beer and Pub Association, and who said any final act should be carefully worded to make sure it does not have unintended consequences, such as, and we've talked about pub workers expected to decide whether private chats between customers constitute a violation of law. I do not believe, as a pro-capitalism business founder, owner and employer, in a million years that Keir Starmer has any desire for the things you've talked about.
But writing legislation is notoriously difficult.
Yeah.
And getting the balance right. So if you put a liability on employers for third-party activities, then if you're running a pub, you want to protect yourself. And so you say you cannot discuss trans rights in this pub, because if you do, I may have an employee who is offended and I may be liable. And so you create an atmosphere where people self-censor because they're worried of the consequences of what you've passed.
OK. So I'm going to address that specifically. I want to bring to life the people that this was primarily aimed at protecting. I think you will remember from your time in Parliament a problem with violence and crimes against retail workers.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is the backstory to this part of this legislation, which, as Angela Rayner said, is very personal to her. But the idea that something as sacred as down the British pub, that you're going to have legislation designed to protect the rights of working people, it would be political suicide. And that's just not what this Labour government's about.
Well, you're sure? It seems to be pretty good at committing political harakiri on a daily basis, which is why I wouldn't necessarily trust them entirely.
Yeah.
But let's also think about the broader implications, because here I think we have a fundamental difference on how you protect workers.
Mm-hmm.
I think workers do best in a thriving economy where there are plenty of jobs. And the best workers' right is to leave and go to a new job. And that in the types of business we've been involved with in our careers, the employee is actually fundamental to the business. It's not the sort of Victorian factory where the power is all with the bosses and the employees have no power. In those businesses, what you want is to get on the first rung of the ladder.
Yeah.
And that means companies need to be able to correct a mistake.
Agreed.
And that's why I think a 2-year period when you don't have full rights is sensible. Having them on day one is going to make it less likely. I know when I was running a business, it would have made me less likely to take the risk of taking on that one extra person as your business is growing.
Well, you know, to be really honest with you, that point that you've just alluded to is the one part of this legislation that, as a business founder and employer of 100 people, really did give me some cause for concern. But fortunately, the legislation then also included longer probation periods. Because quite frankly, as a lot of listeners of yours will know, Jacob, some people take the mickey, right? And that then is really hard on the decent, hard-working employees of any organisation. So on that specific point, I'm with you. But on the bigger sino comparisons, etc. I'm not with it.
OK. And on the issue of 0 hours, I think 0 hours is very difficult too, because lots of people, particularly people who are carers, whether for children or for older people, find that the flexibility of working is very useful to them. Now, there are some 0 hours contracts that I would dislike, the ones where you can't work for anybody else, you can only do the contract for one person and you can't earn your income any other way. I think there are restrictions that are unfair, but generally 0 hours contracts are a flexibility that both employers and employees can benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably disagree with you on that, as you anticipated, just because from the perspective of many in the Labour Party, 0 hours contracts have been used to restrict people's choices and to allow some unscrupulous organisations to not offer the full range of benefits and support and the full costs, if you like, of employing someone properly. So, I mean, I would hope that any unintended consequences, the bill has still got to pass through several stages in Parliament, but they are weeded out, and there are lots of external organisations inputting. But the big picture is, Jacob, as of the 4th of July, the general election, were there many people who felt that there needed to be more reasonable protections in the workplace? It doesn't mean that you're against profits, building companies, and that's, I think, why this legislation's coming.
I think it's actually an overall balance that people wanted a government that was in favour of business, and that if you took this as a standalone, there may be a stronger case for it that you're making. That's what people voted for. And I'm a great believer in people getting what they voted for. But with the national insurance rise, with the reduction in the national insurance threshold, businesses feel that they've been in the firing line, and this is a further burden on them. I just wonder whether it will survive the parliamentary process, because Labour's under huge pressure now because of the economic disappointment, to put it no stronger than that.
Yeah, I think, listen, as a business founder, overnight, on a 10 million turnover, that decision on employers' NI stuck 100 grand that wasn't in the business plan onto the cost base. So we feel it, we understand it, albeit in the context of what the government is trying to do. I think that the measures will ultimately, the extra cost that business are paying, it's our investment in trying to make this country better. And that, you know, can you still become wealthy in this country? Yes, if you work hard, you know that. You see it in your business career all the time. Can you make profits? Yes. I think the government did something unpopular quite early for the very valid reason of trying to make this country great again, to coin a phrase.
Well, let's make the great British nation great again. That's a good slogan borrowed from the one and only Donald Trump. Anyway, thank you very much to Kevin. In a moment, I'll be speaking to the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith, about whether Rachel Reeves has crashed the economy. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Mr. Motivator, he joins us now. Mr. Motivator, a very happy new year to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. There you are, bright and early. So how are things? How can we all kick ourselves into shape?
By the end of January, most people have thrown their New Year's resolution out the window. I think what's important is that we make a change for life, and we set ourselves small goals, and as we achieve those goals, then we reward ourselves. And in other words, you want to run 10K, you don't immediately get up and go run 10K, do you? You run between 2 lampposts and walk between 20. If you're not into running, don't choose running. If you're into dancing, that's great. If you're into any kind of movement, that is the way to keep yourself active, healthy, and also maintain your independence.
So, Derek, is the point that you keep it manageable and small enough that it's achievable?
Why don't we just find 4 exercises that you do for 1 minute each exercise, and you do that 4 times a day? Achievable, isn't it? That's only 4 minutes of exercise. And I guarantee at the end of the day, you'd have done 12 minutes, which is like your daily dozen. So there's your goal. I want to do a daily dozen of exercise lasting a minute each. Right? And the first thing you could be doing is getting up from your chair, right? The moment you stand up, you incorporate so many muscles in your legs, right, that you're going to feel good, yes? So,
right, go on then. Get up off your chair, Adam. Show me how it's done.
Easy, come on.
Easy, yeah. Look at that.
No hand. The next thing I want you to do is to reach up real high. And if you bring it down, up
I'll
and
do
down.
that one.
Yeah.
For a minute, palms facing.
Oh, for a minute?
You're not flying a minute.
There we go.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about Labour's war on free speech, and the mail mogs have come in. Alexander says, love the comparison to Chairman Mao, Jacob, but do you think it's a bit of a great leap? Well, yes, probably is. Jeff, do you think this legislation is a way of showing the EU that we're more aligned with them than the US? Well, if that's the case, it'll be a big mistake once Trump comes in. He won't like that. Amidst the continuing market turmoil over the past week, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, was forced to face the House of Commons earlier today.
This is the #1 mission of this Labour government, and to grow the economy we need to help great British businesses export around the world. That includes to China. Not engaging is simply not an option. Next week I will be meeting with business leaders, investors and entrepreneurs at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos to make the case that the UK is one of the best places in the world to invest. And in the coming weeks I will be setting out further details of our plans to kickstart growth in the economy after 14 years of failure from the party opposite.
Well, yesterday, the Reverend Starmer didn't immediately back his Chancellor before having his spokesman assure the press that she would be the Chancellor in secula seculorum, world without end, amen. But it certainly feels as though her days are numbered. Well, I'm joined now by the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith. Andrew, thank you very much for coming in. The economy is in great difficulties, isn't it? Yeah. That we seem to be moving into stagflation, and Rachel Reeves must bear her share of responsibility.
Absolutely. And it is worrying about the economy. Tomorrow we'll have the inflation figures. I suspect that will show what we've seen recently, which is real pressure on costs. A lot of those are coming from the budget decisions. Confidence and hiring decisions, that's jobs for you and me, are at a real low. And as you know, the cost of money is now a near 30-year high. So all of these are the inputs. These are the things that businesses meld with their entrepreneurial spirit to try and compete in the marketplace. But if you can't have the confidence to hire, you don't feel incentivised by the government's decisions. If you're a family business, for example, one of the most egregious things, it doesn't get enough attention, is the family death tax on businesses, destroying people's incentive to take all of the risks and all of the hard things and put in those incredibly long hours that people do to build a business to pass on to their family. We're in a real bind, and she absolutely, all of them, I mean, all of the Labour government must take responsibility. You've mentioned briefly the employment bill, which destroys our flexible labour market, one of the few things that we've got going for us in the UK. Lots of other things besides, locks in union powers. It's a real worry, and it's no wonder that some of the best and brightest people are leaving this country.
And we're beginning to see the real-world consequences of it, aren't we? That mortgage rates are going up, so that's going to cost anybody who is a homeowner and has a mortgage money. Prices are going up. The increase in prices means that interest rates at the short end won't fall at the pace at which they were expected. And businesses keep on saying they're not going to add employment. So unemployment is likely to increase and vacancies have already declined.
All of those things and some. And why? You know, in pursuit of what? Raising a vast amount of money, £40 billion from her budget, and tipping that into an unreformed, less productive public sector. And secondly, fiddling the fiscal rules. And it takes a certain level of incompetence, Jacob, to make up your own fiscal rules, not the fiscal rules that previous governments have been held by, make up new ones, and then less than 6 months later to be missing those because you didn't put enough headroom in the first place.
And giving more power to the ABR, not a body I particularly admire, that is likely to come out in March and say that you're failing. So they have given more authority to a body that's going to make their life more difficult. So it's both economically weak and politically weak.
Yeah, look, there's a very good argument, I'm afraid, to say, and I don't play personalities, but that this Chancellor is genuinely financially illiterate. She has not understood the consequences. In fairness to the OBR, their verdict on her budget decisions was immediate and damning. It raised quite rightly that it would lead to higher inflation, higher interest rates, lower growth and lower jobs. They did that as soon as they saw her budget. Day by day, different businesses, different economic forecasters are revealing exactly that's happening. So, you know, the Chancellor does need to change course. It is absolutely tried for the government to turn around, as they've done a number of times in recent days, and say it's all about growth. And yet, day after day, across the road in Parliament, we're voting for more bills to put more red tape on business. And my final point is she's just come back from China. She talked about pragmatically engaging with other countries, other markets. I think that's right. I'm still a free trader. However, I've also revealed in a written question that I put down in Parliament that no contact has been made by the Department of Trade, the department I shadow, with Trump's transition team. Now, they're the biggest market, they're the biggest single inward investor in the UK, and they're our biggest single trading partner. So, you know, make a case if you want to for getting on a plane and going to China. Turns out she didn't come back with very much. But why on earth, when this government is not delivering growth, are they not engaging more with the US?
And she came back with £600 million, but in the context of the UK economy, £600 million is not an enormous amount of money.
Yeah, and to be honest, while she was away, she's cost this country more than £600 million in the higher interests that we're all going to have to pay for the borrowing of the government. Government borrows a very significant amount of money. The interest bill is more than our defence budget. And simply during the period she was away, our interest rates went up by more than £600 million.
And the decline in the pound, which makes our imports more expensive. So the inflationary pressure is getting greater. This is my real worry. It's stagflation, and stagflation is very hard to get out of because you've got to take decisions that are very painful. And we saw when she cut the pensioners' fuel allowance how unpopular it was to make a relatively small cut to one benefit. If she's going to have to cut benefits by tens of billions of pounds, then the squealing will be really difficult for a Labour Chancellor to survive.
Yeah, and there's one thing she could do right now, which is pick up the phone to David Lammy and say, what on earth do you think you are doing paying the Mauritians something like a rumoured £9 billion to take away our sovereign territory? I mean, it's just absolute nonsense, Jacob, that government talk, they talk the talk. They say we're going to make tough decisions. They say there's no money. They say that we can't afford to do these things. And then at the same time, the student political attitudes are running around the world, spraying foreign aid and now paying people to take our sovereign territory
away. The human rights lawyers who are all mates of Keir Starmer's from his legal days, that's 6 years of the money to the pensioners that they're about to give away. And other economies aren't going this way, particularly not the US. The US is growing. Its interest rates are going up because of growth, not because of decline and because of government-created inflation. We can see how other countries do it better.
Correct. These are, we've got our own examples as well of, Mrs. Thatcher who came in and significantly liberated parts of the economy, removed red tape, in that case, removed things like international capital controls, and of course, entrepreneurship flourished. A generation of small businesses were set up, and that is what helped grow the economy. It's business that hires people. It's business that invests. It's business that improves the community and the high streets in which we live.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much. We were both at John Moynihan's book launch earlier today, which shows exactly how to grow the economy. In a moment, we'll be hearing some reaction to Andrew's comments, but also looking at a shock new poll that could tear the two-party system asunder.
Hello again. Very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be increasing amounts of sunshine from the northwest, and it is going to stay generally dry for most of us. Also, mostly dry through this evening and overnight because of the fact that we have high pressure to the south of us dominating the story. That being said, there's still a weak front across us, and that's bringing some thick cloud across central parts and some drizzly rain, particularly over the higher ground towards the west. There will be some clear skies, particularly over eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, but for many it's a cloudy night, and with that then temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A pretty mild start to tomorrow morning, albeit across some eastern parts of Scotland where we have those clearer skies it could be a touch chillier here, and there may even be a little bit of frost. The flip side of that though is there will be some brighter skies across eastern Scotland first thing tomorrow morning. Notice towards the far northwest there's some rain waiting to push its way in and some blustery winds in association with this, but across much of Scotland, northern England, quite a bit of cloud to start, a much sunnier start though for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud across central southern England and also Wales, and here it's going to be quite low in places, so some hill fog, some murky conditions, even a bit of drizzly rain, could be a little bit dank at times as we go through the morning. As we go into the afternoon, we are going to see increasing amounts of sunshine across much of Scotland, northern and western England and Wales, holding on to the grey, cloudy skies though across parts of the southeast. Temperatures again a little bit above average for the time of year across the north, generally getting into double figures, nearer normal towards the south. Looking ahead to Thursday, and again it's a bit of a northwest-southeast split when it comes to cloud amounts, so staying cloudy and grey towards the southeast, most places having another largely dry day though. And the mostly dry weather continues as we go through the end of the week and into the weekend, but it is going to be pretty cloudy for most of us, and we're going to see our temperatures dropping as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, welcome back. We were talking about the economy and the mail mogs have come in. Robert says, Starmer and Reeves have the qualities which take this country to the edge of oblivion. They are both wrong and stubborn, a recipe for disaster. And Dean says the Chancellor is officially responsible for UK economic growth and prosperity. So far, Red Rachel has failed her job role and lost the confidence of business and the markets. Perhaps this is all aligned with her alleged CV falsification. Very good question, Dean. Well, joining me now for reaction to the Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffiths' comments about the economy and Rachel Reeves moments ago is my most intellectual panel, former Conservative Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove and the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Michael, what is the case for Rachel Reeves as you see it?
Well, I suppose the case for Rachel Reeves is that she did inherit a pretty dire situation, and whoever had taken over at the Treasury would have had to make some very difficult decisions, either about putting up taxes or cuts in public expenditure or whatever. And, Jeremy Hunt deliberately didn't, and you and your party deliberately didn't come up with answers to those questions. It was put off in the full knowledge that Labour would then face these decisions and face the outcry that has ensued. So it is very difficult. And I think Rachel Reeves is in a more difficult position now than all the beleaguered chancellors of our lifetime, Dennis Healey or Geoffrey Howe or Jenkins and Callaghan in the 1960s. In their cases, it was fairly obvious what they had to do. It was very, very uncomfortable. In the case of Rachel Reeves, it's not really obvious to me what she does.
And do you think she is intellectually up to it?
I don't think... I think she is a... I think she's intellectually of higher calibre than some chancellors we've had. I don't think she's really... 90%, 95% top-notch. I think this government suffers from a lack of talent. They've got some quite talented people on the back benches, and Starmer's rushing them through into ministerial jobs. And I think the odds are she won't survive the Parliament as Chancellor. But then, a lot of Chancellors don't survive the Parliament.
Tom, it's a fair point, isn't it, that the general election didn't discuss taxes. Everybody kept quiet about it. And it's a bit like 1992, when we said we had no need and no plans to raise taxes. We won the election, we got in, and we suddenly found that we had a need and developed a plan to raise taxes. And Labour's in that sort of position, dealing with something that, in the unlikely event we'd won the election, we'd be doing something similar.
Well, I think Penny Mordaunt might have something to say about that from the debates, in the sense of she was consistently saying that Labour are going to put your taxes up, and that's precisely what's happened.
But we'd have had to do it too.
I think there would undoubtedly have been quite challenging fiscal decisions that would have needed to be taken. But, in the end, this government has promised the earth and set very, very high expectations. And I think one of the issues that really strikes me is the fundamental challenge that they have is the fact that there is a litany of broken promises. They presented a lot of the country's problems as being very simple to fix, and that was never going to be the case.
But what do you say about the black hole that Rachel had to fill?
Well, I would say that many of the spending decisions have been decisions that have been within the gift of ministers in this government to make. And you look at, for example, the payouts, they were their decisions to go above inflation.
And that's a fair point, isn't it? Particularly the money to the railway drivers.
Well...
and the doctors and on, all their mates got
some
cash.
of those pay deals are about growth, because if you don't have a properly functioning health service and getting more people out of sickness and back into work, then that is a hindrance to the economy. If you don't have a railway system that operates properly, if you don't have, if a quarter of your train drivers are due to retire in the next 5 years, or it may even be more than that. It's a huge number. You do have to do something about recruiting more. And that is what lies behind those pay deals. And so, everywhere you go, there's incredibly difficult decisions. And of course, the other factor that we haven't mentioned is that, this government is all about growth, but the growth is going to be tiny in terms of per head. So in other words, if you allow for the extraordinary increases in population that we've seen these last 2 years, and are likely to carry on, maybe not quite at the high level, but still at high levels, then if 1% growth could end up being virtually nothing.
So we need to move on, but basically, to summarise, Michael, you're saying she is doing a pretty good job in difficult circumstances, and a Tory Chancellor would have made similar decisions.
I'm not sure I'd be quite as praising as you've been. I do think she got the balance wrong with over taxes on business and taxes on people.
But the taxes had to go up. There was very little choice. All right. Well, thank you very much for a valiant defence of Red Rachel. In other news, Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq has resigned from the government following corruption allegation. Now, bear in mind, she was the corruption minister. The idea of a corruption minister is not that you should have allegations of corruption against you. She was cleared at breaching the ministerial code and continues to maintain her innocence. And there were fears of the continued spotlight on her would be a distraction, which is what she said in her letter of resignation. Well, back to my panel. Ministers often resign to avoid being a distraction when they're in trouble, don't they?
This is a really, really serious case. And actually, the problem is that it reflects incredibly badly on Starmer's judgment. Tulip Siddiq said on the BBC in 2009 she was the spokesman in this country for the Awami League, which is the governing party up until a few weeks ago in Bangladesh, a deeply corrupt and authoritarian party that was run by her aunt.
Is it fair to say a murderous regime, that people disappeared under that regime, or is that going too far?
No, I think human rights experts will say that is true. And she was clearly representing the Awami League for many years in this country. This was exposed by Channel 4 News back in 2017. People wrote to Starmer about it. He knew about it at the time. He himself is a human rights lawyer. And yet she stood as a candidate in the 2019 election. Admittedly, Starmer wasn't leader then. Starmer was happy for her to stand in 2024 as a candidate. And not only that, he made her a minister. The lack of judgment, character judgment here is extraordinary. But it always amazes me how political leaders, Cameron was another example, plenty of them, but William Hague really do have a sort of blind side when it comes to judgments of character and promoting friends and buddies.
But she was cleared by the standards chap in Downing Street. She'd obeyed the ministerial code. She'd told the Prime Minister everything that she had done. Hadn't she done all the right things? And are we going to have any ministers...
Well, it may well be that the way in which they do these inquiries is just very odd. But you only have to look at how she denied she had anything to do with her aunt's government in Bangladesh. And we now know that in the ruins of the presidential palace that her aunt had her election leaflets framed. So the connections between her and the Bangladeshi regime and her refusal to take up a human rights case involving a British Bangladesh lawyer who disappeared in Bangladesh some years ago. Her refusal to take on that case was, when she was the person in this country with the most influence in Bangladesh.
But she stood up for Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. She had a good reputation for doing that.
She did, but
she's not a bad person.
Why not stand up for this British citizen who was suffering and has clearly suffered at the hands of her regime, her aunt's regime?
Let me bring you in, because you've been a minister. If ministers who are cleared by the standards chap in Downing Street still have to resign, it becomes pretty arbitrary, doesn't it? Just you have a press pile on, another minister's got to go. Next week they'll be on to somebody else. And it makes running a government very difficult.
They've spent a lot of political capital on this, and this has run on for a considerable length of time before reaching this conclusion. And when you look at the exchange of letters, there was very small room for manoeuvre in terms of the outcome of where this has ended up.
It was a warm letter from Keir Starmer saying that he hoped to bring her back, effectively.
I think the thing that surprises me the most about this, and you and I have both been through ministerial appointment processes, is the fact that to afford the anti-corruption responsibilities when there were these sorts of murmurings about these issues, to me, seems extraordinary.
They weren't
I struggle to
murmurings.
see how...
They were, you know, this was covered widely in the press. I mean, the Financial Times pointed out the other day, for example, that when Channel 4 News did a case about a particular human rights case, they filmed, they doorstepped Tulip Sadiq, and even before Channel 4 News' film went out, the security authorities in Bangladesh were onto this guy's family, telling him to get Channel 4 News to stop, get off the case.
And you do have to deal in facts. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer would have known all of that. I think
no, but people get to the position. How did the security authorities
but we can't determine that here. We don't.
No, but it's worth looking into, isn't it? I mean, it's the sort
that.
of thing that Starmer should have been looking into. I mean, he should have. Yeah, you know, in politics there come stories, and you smell a rat, and you know it's going to happen. She has been an accident waiting to happen for many years.
All right, well, we'll leave that as the final point. Thank you to my panel. In a moment, I'll be speaking to the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, as the UK is on the precipice of betraying its closest ally.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you are searching for any winter sun, you'll find it in Iberia, but it's going to be breezy in the Canaries and there'll be further showers across much of Greece. Cyprus is looking fine and warmer than average for the time of year. This area of low pressure bringing some showery rain to the south of Italy and Sicily. Balearics, Spain, Portugal, mostly fine, plenty of sunshine, but an area of showers will approach here during Thursday and Friday, making it feel a little cooler.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So Prepped used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously Prep for Life, Prep for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps, you know, share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between healthy and unhealthy food?
Yes, I think that, you know, kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that, you know, I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, you know, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or you know, that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and something that really needs to be pushed, and that's what we're doing as a charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Rumour has it that His Majesty's government is on the brink of signing its Chagos Islands deal with Mauritius just before the Trump inauguration. But as my next guest has pointed out, does this tell the United States that we can't be trusted to uphold shared security interest? Well, I'm joined now by the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Suella, thank you very much for joining me. What is the risk to global security from giving away these faraway islands of which we know very little?
Well, to quote the former First Sea Lord, Lord West of Spithead, it's very irresponsible to voluntarily give up sovereign territory located in the Indian Ocean. We have, from a strategic defence point of view, a vital base in the form of Diego Garcia that the Americans use, and it gives them and it gives us as their allies an important presence in the Indian Ocean as a counterweight to an increasingly hostile and aggressive China.
But the United Nations Court gave an advisory opinion saying we ought to give it back to Mauritius. Do you not think that carries any weight?
I don't. No, it was an advisory opinion. That's the key word. So it wasn't a binding judgment, as you are used to from many other courts. It was an advisory decision, non-binding, and therefore perfectly lawful for the United Kingdom to ignore it. And importantly, so because there's absolutely no evidence to justify Mauritius's claim to the Chagos Islands. Now, I should declare an interest. My mother is from Mauritius, actually. I may be the only member of Parliament with a slight conflict of interest on this issue. So I have a bit of Mauritian blood in me, but my loyalties are with Britain and the United Kingdom. And obviously the Chagos Islands, together with Mauritius and the Seychelles, were part of the British Empire in the 1800s. When it came round to independence in the 1960s, the Wilson government carved it all up and lawfully paid for the Chagos Islands. It was an agreement which was formalised and a very good agreement. It seems now that Mauritius is coming back to undo that agreement, to look behind those terms and assert a very vexatious claim of sovereignty to the Chagos Islands. It's not based on any serious legal opinion, and that's why this is a humiliating decision by the UK government.
But isn't it all our fault? Because these conversations started when the Conservatives were in office, when there was a Conservative Foreign Secretary, and although David Cameron wasn't so keen on it, his predecessors were, and that if we hadn't started it, this wouldn't be happening now.
Well, I actually think this is more of a Foreign Office civil servant kind of pet project. For many years, the Mandarins at the Foreign Office have been very, very enthusiastic about giving up the Chagos Islands, and they've hired lawyers and they've, really sat on this opinion. I think effectively they tried their luck with a few Conservative ministers. They've made a little bit of progress, but not much really, and they've just sat around waiting for a Labour government, knowing that the kind of appeasing wokeness that David Lammy personifies would be perfect to front up this ridiculously unwise decision from a UK national interest point of view.
Well, but David Lammy, our distinguished Foreign Secretary, as you point out in your article, went on Mastermind, so he must be a highly intelligent man to be able to do that, not something I've been able to do. But the Labour Party is full of lawyers. It's got lots of human rights lawyers, lots of them friends of the Reverend Starmer's. So surely it's got the best legal advice in doing this and is simply following international law.
Well, I actually think this is more of a Foreign Office civil servant pet project. For many years, the Mandarins at the Foreign Office have been very, very enthusiastic about giving up the Chagos Islands, and Well, I mean, of course, far be it from me to question the great mind that is David Lammy, representing the UK on the world stage. I think the man on Mastermind, he said that Henry III came off before Henry II, or got his kings mixed up anyway. And he was, he's someone who has, really insulted the incoming president of the United States, and is now, has an obsession, I'm afraid, with decolonizing, as much as he can, apologizing for the British Empire and for our history. And something like this is very much up David Lammy's street, but it's at odds with our national interest. It lets down our strategic ally, the US, and it's also, importantly, letting down the Chagosians. The thousands of Chagosian nationals, some of whom live here, are very much against this deal. They want to be returned to the islands, and they want to have the right to self-determination, but importantly, they largely want to be an overseas territory of part of the United Kingdom. They don't want to be an independent nation. They definitely don't want to be governed by the Mauritians. So legally, there is no basis for the decision. Politically, this is very damaging. And from a strategic defence point of view, this is, as I said, as the former First Sea Lord said, it's irresponsible.
And it's being done just before Donald Trump is inaugurated so that he can't veto it. And they're getting £9 billion for the privilege. Suella, thank you so much for joining me. I'd encourage people to read your article in tomorrow's Telegraph. Well, with me now is my panel, former Conservative Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove and journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Michael, you're supportive of the Chagosians having the right to self-determination, aren't you?
I am, and I'm glad that Suella Braverman brought them up, although only at the very end of her interview. And I think that, often these discussions go on and there is no mention made of them. And it seems to be that both the first deal that this government agreed before the government changed in Mauritius, they did without consulting the Chagosians, either those in Mauritius or there's quite a large community in this country now, particularly around Crawley in Sussex. And it seems that this deal as well has been done without any consultation with representatives of the Chagosians. I mean, they were done an appalling injustice in the 1960s, expelled from their islands, and if that had been done to anybody in the West, there would still be outcries. But because they're, from overseas and from Asia, they don't get the consideration that they should get.
But we did start this. This point I was putting to Suella, it's easy to blame Labour and say it's all their fault, but Conservative ministers were going along with this. They should just have said no. And then Labour would have been starting from a clean sheet of paper, would never have got the deal done so quickly. So it is our fault.
So I agree with you about those origins, but I do think that this is taking extraordinary twists and turns. We seem to be paying even more for even less. A £9 billion price tag. Obviously, a lot of talk today about the length of the lease being reduced as well. This is going to be very detrimental to our relationship with the incoming US administration. I wonder if incoming President Trump might tweet about this overnight. That would throw a spanner in the works, wouldn't it? But this just strategically doesn't make any sense. We are in a dangerous, risky world. We should not be going down this route.
Is it part of the reset that Rachel Reeves was trying to get with China? Because Mauritius has essentially been bought by China, and it makes us matier with the Chinese.
Well,
but isn't that a worthy political aim?
I mean, one thing is for sure, that a £9 billion price tag eclipses the $600 million that the Chancellor has been triumphantly talking about today. These are vast sums of money when we're making difficult spending decisions at home. Impossible to know what the conversations have been like when in Beijing. But the truth is, I just think the government's wrong on this.
International law, though, this view of the UN court, that admittedly an advisory view, aren't we the type of government that obeys international law as far as we understand it?
Well, as Suella Braverman said, it's advisory. And, I mean, maybe given his background supposedly as a human rights lawyer, although the previous thing we discussed, Tulip Siddiq would rather suggest perhaps not these days, maybe that is an influence on it. But I'm sure there's a way that we could have wriggled around it.
His great mate is the lawyer representing Mauritius.
Philip Sands, yes.
Yes, it's all the chumocracy, isn't it?
Well, it could be. It could be. I'll leave it to you to say that. But I mean,
do you think it's the chumocracy?
I've got no idea. I'll let them speak themselves on that one.
It is a very good friend of Starmer's who's been representing and stirring it up for years and has got this great deal, £9 billion. I'd love to know how much he gets paid. Perhaps that should be declared. That's another thing for an investigative journalist to look up. Well, thank you to my most pugnacious panel. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, what is on your programme this evening?
Well, I continue my fundraiser for the Maggie Oliver Foundation. We've raised £250,000 in less than 24 hours. We're going to be hearing from a brave survivor. 2/3 of illegal immigrants on ankle tags have cut them off and gone on the run. Reeves is on the rocks. Tulip has wilted. And Labour's pub banter ban could be the end of British pubs.
The pub banter ban. That sounds absolutely terrifying. That'll be splendid, Patrick. That's coming up after the weather. I'm back tomorrow. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg. This has been State of the Nation, and you're waiting for the weather forecast from Somerset. It's going to be absolutely glorious. So good. Visit Somerset.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be increasing amounts of sunshine from the northwest, and it is going to stay generally dry for most of us. Also, mostly dry through this evening and overnight because of the fact that we have high pressure to the south of us dominating the story. That being said, there's still a weak front across us, and that's bringing some thick cloud across central parts and some drizzly rain, particularly over the higher ground towards the west. There will be some clear skies, particularly over eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, but for many it's a cloudy night, and with that then temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A pretty mild start to tomorrow morning, albeit across some eastern parts of Scotland where we have those clearer skies it could be a touch chillier here, and there may even be a little bit of frost. The flip side of that though is there will be some brighter skies across eastern Scotland first thing tomorrow morning. Notice towards the far northwest there's some rain waiting to push its way in and some blustery winds in association with this, but across much of Scotland, northern England, quite a bit of cloud to start, a much sunnier start though for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud across central southern England and also Wales, and here it's going to be quite low in places, so some hill fog, some murky conditions, even a bit of